Hello Booktube, it's Becky from Becky Writes. This is Becky Reads, and this is my Independent Book Week tag. Now we are at the end of Independent Book Week, which is really a British thing, but I wanted to get in on these tag questions because they are awesome. So here is my video celebrating independent bookshops. Question number 1, what book is currently in your bag? So the book that I have been toting around in my bag for the last several weeks is Gilead by Marilynne Robinson. This is a book that I picked up at the beginning of the month from an independent bookshop, and I have been very slowly making my way through. I haven't had very many occasions to like sit down and read this, but this is the great book that you can dip into for like 15 minutes or 20 minutes if you have a break here and there. And yeah, this one has been in my bag for the last several weeks. Question number 2, what is the last great book that you've read? The last great book that I've read is going to be The Argonauts by Maggie. This is a little bit of queer theory and also a memoir about her relationship with her gender fluid partner and getting pregnant and having a child, and just a lot of stuff about queer identity inside the identity of being a partner and a mother. It's a really interesting book. It packs a lot into 150 pages. I did a full review of this, so I will link that down below in case you're interested, but this really is the last truly great book that I've read. Okay, question number 3 is, what book have you gifted the most? I generally pick out books for specific people and don't just randomly gift books, but I would say children's books as a genre are the books I gift the most. I have a niece that is about a month old, a nephew who's 3 years old, and a goddaughter who's 2 years old, so I have lots of little ones in my life to give children's books too, so that is probably, as far as a genre, the book I've given the most. Question number 4, what is your favorite independent bookshop? So my favorite independent bookshop is Little Shop of Stories in Decatur, Georgia. If you live in Atlanta and you go to the square in downtown Decatur, Little Shop of Stories is just tucked right in there, a couple of storefronts down from the Brickstore Pub and Sweet Melissa's. It is one of my favorite independent bookstores. One of the reasons that I love it so much is that it tends to cater to younger readers, to children, to young adults, and they do all kinds of programming and events to get children excited about reading. They do have an adult section, so don't go in thinking that you can't have any adult books either, but it's very curated, mostly with a sort of childlike wonder in mind. And it's a tiny little shop. I mean, it's not big at all, but the people there are fantastic, and I've had some of my new favorites that were discovered there. It was in Little Shop of Stories that I discovered my love for Sherman and Alexie and read The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian. I bought it from them, and it has been one of my favorites ever since. One of the other reasons I love Little Shop of Stories so much is that one of the book buyers, Justin, is a friend of mine. I'm really good friends with his wife and also with him, and I know their kids. Justin is wonderful. He wears bow ties. He's just fabulous. So if you go into Little Shop of Stories and you talk to Justin, tell him Becky says hello, because he's great, and it's a wonderful bookshop in a wonderful part of town. Question number 5, what is your favorite book that was recommended to you by a bookseller or a fellow booktuber? Like I said, The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian is one of my favorite books that was recommended to me by a bookseller, probably is my favorite one. And then I would have to say that from Booktube, anything by Leigh Bardugo, especially Six of Crows, but the Grisha trilogy as well, these I would not have read, I would not have discovered without Booktube, and I'm so grateful I did. I love this world, and I am basically Leigh Bardugo trash for life. Question number 6, what is your favorite bookshop memory? So my favorite bookshop memory has to do with Shakespeare & Co. in Paris. It is a favorite among independent bookshop enthusiasts, but my friend Kristen and I were traveling around Europe for about a week. I was living in England and she'd come to visit me, and so we went to Amsterdam and Paris, and her then boyfriend, now husband, is a huge fan of The Lost Generation, particularly F. Scott Fitzgerald, and so we knew that way back in the day they hung out at the Shakespeare & Company bookshop. So we had to go, and we spent hours trying to find it. We got so turned around and we couldn't find it. Neither of us speak French. We finally found it. We did a little like impromptu photo shoot of her outside the front so we got the marquee that says Shakespeare & Co. and she was sitting at the little table out front reading a book, and then we wandered through the bookshop, which is full of cute little curiosities, and she bought, I think, a copy of The Great Gatsby and had the stamp on the front page and gave that to her boyfriend as a birthday present when she returned from Paris, and he still has it as like his prized collection. That whole memory of finding it and doing a little photo shoot and going inside and finding the book, it was just so much fun, and it reminded me of just why I love bookshops and how many great memories are wrapped up in books. It just makes me happy. And this leads into question number 7. What do bookshops mean to you and why do you love them? I just think of books as friends. They are adventures waiting to be discovered, and I love browsing through a bookshop, seeing how different booksellers create curated lists and displays. I love hearing other people's enthusiasm for their books. I just love bookshops for that reason. I especially like independent bookstores because there is a personality there that is so lost with the big corporate chains. We don't have that many big corporate chains left in the United States. I think the only one around here is a huge Barnes & Noble, and don't get me wrong, there's a great place for Barnes & Noble in life, but I just love the fact that so many independent bookstores are like family owned, and they are there and they have like the bookstore pet, and they want to talk to you and they want to just be enthusiastic with books, and they know so much. They can tell you and lead you, and oh, if you like this then you might try this, or if this is a genre you've been reading, you might try something out of this genre that can get you reading more broadly, or whatever. I love it. I love the discovery that happens in new bookshops. Question number 8 is, what are the books that made you or influenced you in your life? This is worthy of a whole separate video, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time. I'm going to highlight a few that came to mind immediately. The first one, of course, is the Oxford Book of British Literature that I mentioned, the big green book that I grew up with. I learned to read by memorizing Tennyson poems and Shakespearean sonnets that my dad read to me every night before I went to bed. This is my copy of The Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad. I love this book. I have had this a long time, and as you can see, it has been a well-loved copy. I read this for the first time my senior year of high school, and I read it again in college. This was the book that made me realize I love complex literature. Now, I have to be in the mood for it. I prefer reading complex literature in a community, in a class where we're like intentionally dissecting it, but I loved this book. I mean, the content and the story is like frightening and terrifying, but the language, the command of language, that is like my thought. Whenever I think of something as a good book, I think of the command of language. Joseph Conrad knew like 5 languages before he learned English, and he still wrote Heart of Darkness. And so this is one of those books that made me realize that I was going to love literature not just for the adventure and escapism of a story, which is what I primarily read for, but that I could love literature for the actual literary merit. That was really what this book, this very slim, tiny little volume, meant to me. The Vagina Monologues I've talked about before, but this one just was my first foray into feminist literature, like knowingly into feminist literature. I was a freshman in college when I saw this performed, and I've since read it, and I just appreciate the raw, honest reality of the female experience that I had not been given in a lot of the books that I read growing up. These stay with me, reminding me of why feminism is so necessary and so important, and why we should empower women, and how just speaking words like vagina is kind of a crazy feminist act. And the last book that I am going to show you is Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston. This is a beloved and kind of messy old copy I've had since my junior year of high school, where I read this for an AP English class. For me, this book represents several books. Of course this one, this represents some Toni Morrison that I read, this represents To Kill a Mockingbird, because these are the books that I remember loving even though they weren't the kinds of books that I would have ever picked for myself. This is when I realized I could love literature that wasn't adventure stories and escapist reading. It has just meant so much to me of a woman's struggle, and helped me to realize that reading can allow you to be in someone else's footsteps, living a life that is foreign to you, even if it's not like a fantastical or futuristic or, you know, sci-fi life. So this one represents several books, but Their Eyes Were Watching God definitely is a book that will stay with me for the rest of my life. Okay, question number 9 is a little bit late, but it is, what book do you recommend that readers give their fathers for Father's Day? Now, Father's Day has come and gone, at least in the United States, and so I will go ahead and give you an idea for next year, is to gift your fathers or your father figures in your life anything by Bill Bryson, especially A Walk in the Woods, which I think is a very dad kind of book. It's a memoir of a guy in his 40s who meets up with one of his college friends who's like super not fit, and they decide to try to walk the Appalachian Trail. It doesn't go too well. They are both fine, but it's just sort of their reflections on getting into middle age and getting older and their friendship and all of that sort of stuff. And I enjoyed it and thought it was funny. I gave it to my dad and he thought it was funny, so I just think it's a great sort of dad book, and yeah, that's what I would recommend. And question number 10, what books are at the top of your TBR list? I have a couple of books that I'm angling to get to, and the first one is World Without Princes. This is the second in the School for Good and Evil trilogy. I've already started it, but I haven't gotten very far, so I definitely want to finish this one. And then of course, just to complete the trilogy and finish The Last Ever After, which is the third installment of the School for Good and Evil series. And finally, the book I am most excited about, and I cannot wait to start it, Arcadia by Ian Pierce. This has been going around, lots of people are excited about it. Thank you, Jen Campbell. This might be another one of those, a booktuber recommended it to me and now it's my favorite. I'm really hoping so, but I can't wait to start this one. Alright, even though Independent Book Week is over, I still am going to tag a couple of people. G Swizzle, welcome back, and so you should do a tag. I'm gonna tag Under the Radar books, and I am gonna tag Vienna Waits books. I think all of you would do a great job of exposing me to some new bookshops where you're from and telling me about the books that have inspired you. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Please let me know what your favorite independent bookshop is. I would totally love to know, because if I ever travel to where you are, I would totally want to check it out. Hope you guys are doing well, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye!